Hello, everyone, and welcome to the our Parent College Prep event tonight. Just one sec, I'm trying to get my video started. But my name is Eva Ray. I'm an admissions counselor here at Calvin University, and I'm really encouraged that you all are here tonight because I think that, especially right now, you are one of your students' greatest allies. With everything that's been thrown on their plate, I really appreciate that you are on their team. And one of my favorite things to see as an admissions counselor here at Calvin is students being excited about going to college and about their college decision and parents being excited for them, but also with them, alongside them. And so being on the same team, maybe some of your students might be too cool to admit it, but I think it means a lot to them. And so I'm really glad that you joined us tonight. And tonight we're going to do a couple of things. So we have Sarah Visser, our Vice President of Student Life here, and then Melissa Rousseau, who is the Director of Admissions, and they're going to be talking to you about what the steps going on from this point forward are for the admissions process and the college decision process, and just helpful steps and tips and how you can be a great ally for your students. And so after we get a little bit of conversation through that, we're going to have a question and answer session. And so we have some current parents of Calvin students here joining us to answer your questions. And so if you'd like to ask a question throughout tonight, there is a Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. You can throw a question in there now and throughout the time, and we will get to them as we start the question and answer section. But without further ado, I'll have Melissa start us off with our conversation tonight.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I am Melissa Rousseau. I am the Director of Admissions here for Calvin University, and really thrilled to be here with you tonight. Just trying to get my second screen here up and loaded. There we go, perfect. So glad to be here with you tonight. I see lots of you just pouring in. The participant number is climbing, which is fantastic. Thank you for taking time tonight. I know it's difficult to fit this in the afternoon or evening, depending on where you're at overall, and really glad you're here. I have met a lot of parents in my 20 years or so in higher education, and I've heard a lot of you have reasons that you want to really be able to support your students through the college application process, looking for different ways to support them and guide them and have a little fun along the way as well. For those of you that are maybe on your second or third child going through college, you know that it has this balance, right, of stress and fun and those aha moments. There can be a lot of great moments in this whole thing. Many parents that I've met over the years have felt that they want to help their student make a smart choice, one that's going to be a good fit for them in terms of providing a solid career choice. Can be a great fit for them in terms of the ways that they want to get involved in college, and also as a safe and nurturing environment, but in the end is also an affordable choice too. I hope that you're going to learn tonight some tips that you can use to help guide your student through this choice, because as you'll hear from some of our parents tonight who are current Calvin student parents, they've likely felt the same way that you have and have found Calvin to be the right choice for them. And I hope that story will come through and that you can feel free to identify with them and ask those questions. We're going to start tonight by talking about the application process and some tips of how your student can really get a good start in their first year. So as you're considering the college search process, one of the biggest things you can take advantage of are college visits. You really want to encourage your student to research colleges and you yourself do some research as well. Getting to know the colleges is really going to help you define where you're going to visit and what it is that you're hoping to learn overall. You really want to boil it down to some of those specific interests that they have. The programs, things like athletics, different arts programs or activities programs that they want to get involved in. The location is really key. The size is key. And so I want to boil it down to this, the couple of key qualities that are really going to make a difference for you and your student. There's a lot of qualities to focus on though, right? So you really want to boil it down to a couple. What I tend to hear over and over are these three that I'll leave with you, and think about how this applies to you and your son or daughter. Programs is probably our number one question that we get asked about. So what are the kinds of things that your student wants to experience? What are the academic experience going to be like? Do they think they're going to get involved in lots of research? Do they hope that it'll be a hands-on program? Do they hope that it'll be a type of environment where there'll be a lot of meaningful discussion? There's a lot of things around programs. Career outcomes is a big question that we get to. Second one is activities. They want to find out about events and clubs and athletics that they're really excited about. You might actually be surprised that your student gets excited about things that they didn't get excited about in high school. They might be looking for a new environment and a new thing. Oh, you can keep back on the other slide. Sorry, I've got you all tripped up. One thing to keep in mind as you're also thinking about schools like Calvin is that faith fit. Is your student looking for studying in a Christian context? Are they looking to study in an environment where they're really surrounded by a Christian perspective? Is that important to them? That's going to be a good thing to be aware of as you get into this. As you're thinking through those key qualities, one thing to be careful of is to not define the My Perfect College checklist, but rather think about evaluating each of your schools that you're looking at with a more holistic perspective overall, with all of their pluses and minuses, and kind of adding those up together to get a view of them overall, because they're all going to have something great about them and something that you're not real crazy about, but be thinking about that holistically and how that really fits all of those key qualities that you're looking for. Doing that homework is going to be important before you hit the road. And honestly, be very open to looking at different schools. So if your student is especially feeling undecided, tour some really different schools. Get as far out as you want to go. Try to get a real experience for what different schools are like. The second thing here, and this is important, especially this year, is to get creative about how you do the visit. COVID has really changed the way that we're doing college visits, and many schools are quickly creating a lot of alternate ways to connect with faculty and students and staff. Take advantage of that. Be open to those unusual things that maybe you wouldn't have thought about before. Those individual tours, virtual options, virtual connections with faculty, students. If you're going to go on campus, make sure you're asking about safety protocols. It not only assures you of your safety in that moment, but it's also a really good indicator for the culture of the university and how they're going to take your student safety seriously as well. You want to be proactive and seek some ways to get connections built. So don't be afraid to say, hey, I'd really like to talk to this type of faculty member, or I'd like to talk to this kind of department. Can you help me get connected? It's going to be important right now to be proactive in that and say, hey, I would like to get in touch with somebody. Schools are going to be more than willing to accommodate you. We are all hungry to help out your students and you in this process. So be creative, be proactive, ask for what it is that you want to do. And a pro tip here is that because we're in this no travel environment right now, this actually gives you a lot of flexibility to visit as many schools as you want from as many far reaches of the world as you want, because we're all virtual right now. So there's a great opportunity to actually get out and go explore the world. The third tip here is to really think about how can you help reduce some stress. Think about your son or daughter's mental health right now, their physical well-being. This can be really hard for them. This is a big choice to make in their life. And so how can you help them with reducing some of that stress? Helping to make this a lighthearted, fun experience, even in the middle of everything that we're going through right now. Doing as much advanced planning as you can, helping them boil down to those few key things so that they can really, narrow the list down and not feel so overwhelmed by everything that's happening right now. So those are my tips for visiting right now, which is probably a lot of information, but let's move on to the next part here, where we can talk about things to look for as you're thinking about that start in college, and a couple of tips to be watching for right now, because some of this is information that you need to plan for right now. One of those is joining programs like our cohort first year programs. So Calvin has some special programs that are designed specifically for students that are really inquisitive, who want to drive to make a difference. They want to connect with others. You can join cohort first year programs, such as our Artist Collaborative, our Ministry Leadership Project, our Perkins Leadership Fellows Program, and an array of different honors programs too. The hitch is that they have early deadlines. We have deadlines of December 1st. And we're not unique in this. Many schools are going to have these kinds of first year programs that students want to get into, really gives them a solid experience and honestly helps them retain at a really great rate later on. So they'll get really engaged in college, have a good network of connection and support. It's a great experience for students. But the tip here is to watch for those early deadlines. You can find information on our first year programs right on our website where you look under the academics first year programs area. The second thing to be thinking about with starting off strong is your student going to get involved in athletics or in student organizations? It is more than okay to have your student reach out to one of the coaches to say, hey, I'm interested in learning about, or I'd like to be involved with your team in some way. Encourage them to do that, but your student's got to do it, not you. We know that you think your student is fantastic, but it's really up to the student to do that, take that lead with the coaches. Student organizations as well. If you want to have, or if your student wants to get involved in a student organization later on, this is a great chance for them to say, hey, can I talk with a leader from that group? Can you connect me with an advisor? Or can I see the social media that they're producing? I'd really like to learn about what that is. That can also help your son or daughter get really excited about that experience that they're about to walk into. And then the third thing here is our summer programs. So there are opportunities for students to get an advanced start with summer programs, such as our Entrada program, which is designed for first generation students, even like our career explorations camp that we're going to offer for the first time this summer. There are lots of different ways for them to get involved, get a taste of college, get excited, and really have a leg up to get that great first year start. Now let's talk about the application process, which in many ways is operating just like it has for many years. There's always the push to encourage students to apply as early as they can. There are lots of different special programs. There are scholarship options, early access to certain things about campus by applying early by December 1st. So we do encourage you to have your son or daughter do that early if they haven't already done their application, to get online and send that in soon. We are, just like many other schools, offering waivers for application fees as well, if that's a barrier. So let your admissions counselor know, and we can work through that. One tip on applications is to really watch for missing documents. It's hard to keep up with your emails sometimes, so make sure you're combing through once in a while, searching for that keyword, search for Calvin in the email and see if anybody has sent you information about missing documents. Watch for those things like test scores or recommendation letters or anything like that that maybe you might have missed turning in that first round to make sure that you're moving forward. And anytime you're having questions or you're feeling unsure if something's missing, reach out to admissions. They're going to help you out with that overall. The third thing here is to really dive into financial aid. And I use the word dive into on purpose because it does take you being a little bit proactive, pushing a little further to ask more questions. This is a great time for you to really plug in, to think about comparing things in an apples to apples kind of way. So when we get into the winter here and it's time to look at your award letters of what you've been offered with scholarships and grants, it's important to know how to read that. So really educate yourselves, seek out resources such as like our webinars that we'll do this winter around financial aid and what it is and how to read it. Reach out to some specific resources. And if you need help, give us a call, send us an email. We're in the office and we'd be happy to help you out with things like that. You'll really want to understand the difference between scholarships and grants and loans and student employment, all these types of aid that you'll be offered. How does that all add up? And how does that really boil down to an affordable option for you to send your student to college? Finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about a hot topic right now, which is test optional. This might be causing a bit of confusion with many of you and with your sons and daughters. Test optional has been a movement for the last couple of years around the nation, but it really kicked into action this year with COVID-19 coming and changing so many things around testing. So schools like Calvin, we're seeking ways to remove obstacles for students. We really want to help students be considered for admission without having any delays or any additional things in their way. They've got enough going on right now. So we are in a 2-year trial right now for test optional. We found last year that our admitted class was really strong with test optional and at a high level, just like in our previous years. There is a difference between test optional and test blind. If you're looking at that between schools, Test blind means that a school will not consider your ACT or SAT scores even if they are submitted. So they will completely like turn them off, won't look at them. That's test blind. Many schools are test optional, which means that a student can choose to send them in or not, depending on if they think that that represents them well. So if your student took the SAT test and they're happy with that, they think that fits their grade point in a good way and it represents them well, absolutely send them in. That's going to help us with making a decision and with awarding scholarships. But another person's son or daughter might say, you know what, I either didn't get to take it or it's not representative of my skills. That's okay. Right now, we're saying you don't have to submit it for admission consideration. And we also will review you for scholarship application as well without a test score right now. Now, if you get a chance to take the ACT or SAT, or your student has a chance to take the ACT or SAT, it's too late for us as parents, but if your student gets a chance to take it, they should still take that opportunity. We highly recommend it because it could be a way for them to increase their scholarship offer later on. If they can send us a score before March 1st, that might be a way for them to actually increase their scholarship award offer later on. So we do recommend that students do that. That might not be the case at all schools, but that's how Calvin's operating with additional score information later on. And then finally, there are some opportunities here at Calvin to change your option if needed. We've had a handful of students lately that said, I really plan to send my SAT scores in. I'm scheduled for that test in October. And then their test got canceled or delayed. And now they've needed to change their option and say, I'm going to go test optional instead. That is okay. We're going to work with you. We're going to be flexible on that. And so at all times, reach out, talk to the admissions counseling team, email us admissions@calvin.edu, and we will help you out with answering all of those questions. If you didn't know, I just came from Davenport 3 months ago, and so I'm trying to get that word out of my head. But we are definitely here to support you guys overall. I touched on just a couple of the hot topics that we're hearing a lot about and that we're seeing students and parents have questions on. So I hope that gives you a slight flavor on navigating this process, getting ready for those visits, being ready to navigate that application process and scholarship process, the test optional questions, but we're here to help you out. So email us, like I said, admissions@calvin.edu, and I'll be sticking around at the end as well for Q&A time. Right now, though, I'm going to hand it off to Sarah Visser to talk about that transition to college and really helping your student gain independence.
Well, thanks, Melissa, and thank you, Avery. It's always good to be with parents. One of the things that I get often asked by prospective students and parents is, what advice do you have for us when we think about engaging our students in this college search process? What kinds of things should we be helping them think about? What do we need to know about the way that students' minds are working and the things that they're looking for? So by way of introduction, let me tell you a little bit about student life. So I have the blessing of serving as the Vice President for Student Life here at Calvin. And as a liberal arts institution, Calvin believes strongly that growth and development and learning happens broadly. It doesn't just happen in classroom settings, it also happens in the co-curricular. And so I'm privileged to oversee much of the co-curricular, and that involves student learning. One of the things that we talk about as a student life staff quite often, and in fact, most of us have advanced degrees in higher education and student development, is the process by which students best learn and grow. And you know, if you're in the field of student development or student life, you know that there's this very popular phrase that we throw around a lot that talks about challenge and support. And so when I think about how you're best equipped as parents to help your students, I would actually throw forth this student development theory. Basically, as students are thinking about the ways to look at a college search process, there's the slide we're looking for. We want to make sure that we're offering them both an adequate amount of challenge and an adequate amount of support. And you might say, well, how do I know what's adequate and what's not? If you think about challenge, every human being needs challenge in order to grow. So challenge is the thing that helps us question our beliefs, particularly for students who are emerging adults. Traditionally college-age students, they're starting to come to terms with, what do they believe? Why do they believe that? What is it that interests them, and why do they pursue those interests? We need to give them opportunities to question not to necessarily deconstruct everything and walk away from everything they knew before they came to college, but really to make sure that they understand and that the things that they believe are their own. And it's not just something that they've been spoon-fed or handed their entire lives. That's what adequate challenge looks like. On the other hand, adequate support, we know that students need safety. We know that they need affinity. So to find others like themselves, to be in places where they are affirmed and valued and seen and heard. That's an example of support. The problem comes when we do too much challenge. And what often happens in that situation is, either a student becomes so frustrated that they start to resist, or they might even rebel a little bit, or they become so anxiety ridden that they actually quit trying in the midst of the challenge that they face. And on the flip side of that, if we offer too much support, then students become so comfortable where they are that they're not actually pushed to think differently. And at Calvin, that's something we'd say, no, that's where growth happens, when you begin to get outside of your comfort zone enough that you're on the edge of learning. And what we want for all of our students is growth and development. And I know that as a parent, that's what I want for my kids too. So when I think about offering some advice to you all about how to engage your students around this, I want to suggest that you find the balance, an adequate level of challenge and an adequate level of support. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips that I think will help you as you're working with your students. So first and foremost, one of the things that most emerging adults will share when they get here is that they often feel like people didn't trust them as emerging adults, that people didn't necessarily think that they knew what they needed to know in order to make the best decisions. So as parents, one of the things that you can do that will have the most impact is show your student that you believe in their ability to make a good decision. Help them understand that you value their perspective, that they know themselves. And it's okay to share your vision and what you see in them as a way of affirming that, but actually encouraging them and, again, offering that support to say, I believe that you'll make the right decision. What we find is that that's not only empowering for students, but it actually opens them up to being free to receive feedback and eager to talk about the decision-making process with their family members. The other thing that I encourage you is to start with the why. So often as parents, we start with the what. This is what you ought to look at, or I think you should consider this. Instead of asking our students, in a really honest way, why is it that you want to pursue this next step toward higher education? And what is it? Why does this particular college or this particular academic interest or this particular involvement, why does that align with what you see yourself heading toward in the future? Often those questions of why will once again open students up to considering things. We often joke about the fact that our students, our kids don't always see our wisdom until much later down the road. But usually what will help students open up and begin to see trusted adults, whether that's family members or advisors or mentors, as having something valuable to offer, really is that affirmation that they value the same why as the students themselves do. The other thing I often say is, at all costs, avoid comparing your students to others. Avoid comparing their process to others. So one of the worst things we can do as a parent is constantly say things like, oh, did you see that Joaquin already applied to this school and that school? Or did you see that Anne has already determined that she wants to major in this? What we ought to do instead is really try to call out those unique qualities and skills and aspirations and hopes in our students. So if you're finding yourselves wanting to compare, I would challenge you to, instead of offering that comparison, turn it into a question. So, hey, what have you been thinking about lately? Are there any ways that you're starting to have some clarity about the things that matter to you? Go back to the why questions or why conversations that you've hopefully been having, and invite that as kind of an exploratory inquiry thing rather than comparison, because comparison tends to shut down a conversation and it starts to threaten them seeing you as a trusted companion in the journey rather than somebody who's driving. The next thing I would say is make sure that you are working with them to explore the full range of opportunities. And you heard Melissa allude to a lot of these. One thing that I would say as a result of my education, and you'll probably hear this from some of the parents as well, that the learning doesn't just happen in the classroom. Calvin or any institution really ought to be focused on your students' holistic development and learning. So that means exploring a wide range of opportunities. Certainly you want to go somewhere where you have academic opportunity, right? Where you have an opportunity or your student has an opportunity to study the things that interest them and the things that seem to align with where they want to go vocationally after higher education. But we also want to make sure that we're exploring all of the many opportunities, such as study abroad or student leadership opportunities. A lot of students will mention that the things that were particularly formative for them in their journey through higher ed were opportunities to serve in student leadership roles. So at Calvin, that's things like student senate, it's resident assistants on the residential side, it's serving as an advisory member in our Center for Counseling and Wellness, it's serving as a teaching assistant or an academic ambassador. I mean, there are over 800 student leadership positions at Calvin. And that's just an example of our institution, but make sure that you're exploring all of those. In addition, if your student is somebody who really thrives from community engagement or an opportunity to explore other cultures and other peoples, really look into those things. Look into those just as seriously as you'd be looking into academic departments and majors and research opportunities. All of those things are a critical piece to their development and to their learning in the higher education setting. And the other thing is, I always encourage parents to think about how institutions are intentionally preparing their student to think about vocation and all of the life skills that maybe don't happen in a curricular setting in a classroom, but they're all of the things that become so crucial, not only to thinking about vocation and purpose after institution, but also in the midst of that college journey. Calvin, for example, has a 4-year vocation and life skills program that we call Calvin Life Work. And it's focused on from the very beginning, from the very moment that a student enters Calvin, helping them think about who they are, who they've been created to be, not only in the sphere of academic discipline or work, but also in family and relationships and faith. And that's a 4-year program that developmentally builds on itself to help equip students for vocation and life skills, such as financial literacy and what are all the things we need to think about. So again, explore all of those co-curricular opportunities and really think of it as a holistic full package that you're exploring when you think about college choice. And finally, I'm going to echo something that Melissa said as well. Think about finance. When you think about finances, really have an honest discussion. I often hear from parents and families or even students that there are some assumptions that people think about when they look at particular schools, right? They might say, oh, this school is going to be the cheapest way to get through and I'm going to get the same degree. And I often say, well, interrogate some of those assumptions. When it comes to finances, really take the time, as Melissa said, to do a deeper dive, to understand what does that institutional aid look like? There's a lot of misinformation, I would say, in the media where it'll talk about like, this is the cost of college. And usually what they're doing is they're quoting a sticker price as opposed to the net cost. So I often tell parents, really do that homework to understand what is the net cost. Meaning, here's the sticker price, here's the kind of institutional scholarships, grants, all of that aid. So what is the net cost that you'd end up needing to cover? And also think through the implications. What does it mean to take on debt? And is that something that, you're prepared to do? Is your student prepared to do that? And what kind of investment are you willing to make? There's so many good resources and tools out there that help students and families navigate that. And most institutions ought to be eager partners to help you consider that. I know at Calvin, that's something we value a lot. So don't be afraid to have those honest discussions. And again, think about it as an interrogation. So I'll just share one quick example. One of the things that we've seen at Calvin in recent years is that more and more junior and senior students are choosing to live on campus in their 3rd and 4th years. At Calvin, in your senior year, it's not necessarily something you have to do is live on campus. And in fact, a lot of our students think, well, it'll be cheaper if I move off campus and perhaps get an apartment or a house with a friend. And what we're starting to see is that as students do the math and they start to think about the value of being in close proximity to campus and what comes with a residential experience on campus, whether that's utilities or, accessible Wi-Fi that is strong, what we're starting to see is that when they really delve into those costs and the financial implications, many of them discover that in fact, it makes more financial sense to stay on campus. So that's just one example of a way to really think through all of those different implications that'll help you, again, make the best decision. So just as Melissa said, in the Student Life Division, we desire to be good partners. So we invite you to reach out, to ask questions. I always love to have conversations with parents. So if there's ways that we can be supportive to you, it really is our desire to do that. And now I know that you're going to have an opportunity to hear from some current Calvin parents. So feel free to ask away. I know they have lots of insight they're willing to share.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Sarah and Melissa, for sharing your insights and sharing your time with us tonight. And so now, yes, we're going to move to the parent Q&A panel. And so if you have any particular questions that you'd like to ask them, go ahead and throw that in the Q&A section. It's just a little widget in the bottom of your screen, and then we can go through the questions. But first, I'd just like to have them do a little introduction to get to know them a little bit better. So we have Tammy, Kent, and Tracy. And then why don't we start with Tammy, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then we'll go Kent and then Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Van Veldhuizen, and I met my husband at Calvin, so I am an alumni. I have a daughter who graduated in 2018, and then I currently have a son who is a sophomore there. I have one who's a junior in high school, and Calvin is his #1 choice as well. So we're hoping to still be a part of Calvin for quite a while. And even though we were Calvin alumni and are thrilled that our kids picked that, we did, let them and encourage them to look elsewhere. And the 2 of the 3 have come back to Calvin. So we're happy about that.
Hey everybody, my name is Kent Kuhlman, and I'm coming to you from Massachusetts, central Massachusetts. I've had and currently have 2 students at Calvin right now. My oldest son is now at the University of Michigan studying his master's. He's a graduate and 24 years old. But I have a senior girl and a freshman girl. They're excited to be at Calvin together. Just kind of something to point out, Calvin was not the first choice of any of my children, but after visiting and experiencing the school, they loved it and they continue to love it. They're very happy with their decision. So just happy to answer any questions or get to know you a little better.
Good evening. I'm Tracy Brooks. I am based in Detroit, Michigan, and I have 2 children, one who has attended Calvin as a senior. My daughter, Taryn, is currently a freshman at Calvin. I also have a daughter, Whitney, who is a junior at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, but interestingly, she attended Entrada at Calvin, loved it. Did not choose Calvin, but still has very close Calvin connections and visits her brother and sister during sibling weekend. So we love Calvin. It's been a great experience for our family and definitely for my children.
Awesome. Well, I'm really glad that you all are joining us today. And I'll just start off with a quick question. How did your students choose Calvin? And also, I'm a little bit curious about what your students are studying at Calvin.
Go ahead, Tracy.
I was just gonna say, so my son Wesley, who is a recent graduate, studied business, currently works there for Salesforce in Grand Rapids doing data and analytics. And my daughter Taryn is a freshman, but would love to study and get a degree in nursing.
You want me to go? So my daughter who graduated, she was a kinesiology major, and she's currently at the University of Michigan as well. She's 24, so perhaps she was with Kent's daughter or son. But she is getting her doctorate of physical therapy. And my son, who's a sophomore, is a finance major and trying to pick a minor. So, and they both picked Calvin, kind of like Kent had said, we encouraged them to visit other places, even though we were both, Calvin grads. We wanted to make sure that they weren't going there because we did. We wanted them to explore and, make sure that that was the right fit for them. And they looked at big universities, other small Christian colleges, and came back to Calvin because they just loved, they liked the campus and everybody was friendly. And I'll tell you, for my daughter, a big pull was the suite style rooms with the bathroom in between, not the one that the whole floor has to share. So that's a bonus. But really, and they both just loved it and are loving it there. Great friends. And I know someone had asked about the spiritual aspect, and I can talk about that too when we're done with this question.
Yeah, so Avery, my oldest, my son, entered Calvin thinking that he would be pre-med, and through the course of time decided to stay with the biology major, but ended up in public health. So now he's at the University of Michigan Public Health, one of the top schools there. So really excited for his journey. He graduated a couple of years ago now. My daughter, who's a senior, is a communications and political science major minor. She's super involved with Calvin and is getting married this coming summer. She's also involved in admissions. So she's often sitting at the desk and a happy face with people coming and visiting. And then my youngest daughter, freshman, we encourage her to explore, not necessarily declare a major right away, but really take the core and understand, what her heart says to her and what she's learning. I just remember too, when I was at Calvin, some of the first couple of classes just made me think. It felt like the first time in my life, just opening things up for me. But she's decided to jump into the engineering program. So we're pretty excited about that.
Wonderful. And then actually, I think I probably have interacted with all of your children at some point of time. I graduated 2018. I know Wesley, and I also know Taryn. I saw her a couple weeks ago and had a conversation with her. So yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, I really would like to hear a little bit more about what your students' walk of faith was at Calvin, how they got to get plugged in, and what that experience was like for them.
So I'll just start this one. What I've heard over and over again from my children is that they just felt like there was a real community there. They became close with folks and friends, the chapels and Pastor Mary and all the efforts that everyone, professors, RAs, RDs, everyone involved in student life makes to make this a holistic, all-encompassing experience that involves the heart and the mind. So there's just no shortage of opportunities to express your faith and get involved with others that are thinking through their faith.
Wonderful.
And I can speak to that as well. My kids have enjoyed chapel, the Friday Loft Chapel, I believe that's what it's called. I know they loved doing that, but not just that, they have dorm devotions that I think it's called a Barnabas on every floor that kind of helps lead the spiritual aspect of the floor of the dorm, which I know my son that's there right now, Trevor, is just, his friend is Barnabas. And so they have weekly Bible studies and, and the thing my daughter really appreciated was that they have all these opportunities, but nothing was mandatory as some of the other schools are. So you had a choice to participate, but most people did. And like Kent said, the community, it was just a community of spiritual believers that just encouraged each other. And it's just been a blessing to both of my kids so far.
I would echo those same sentiments. I know that the other benefit of just Calvin University being in Grand Rapids, there are a number of churches that the children, the students have access to. And a lot of them provide transportation to those churches. So the students have a lot of opportunity to engage with folks of their faith and of their choosing, but also be able to visit churches and find a church home, as well as attend chapel on campus. So that definitely has been a grounding experience and an enriching experience for my students that has helped them continue to grow in their faith and evolve in their faith.
Wonderful, and I would say even personally, one of the best descriptions that I've heard about the faith at Calvin is from Pastor Mary, one of our campus pastors, who said it's like a buffet. There's chapel Monday through Friday, classes are blocked off at that time, but there's also dorm worship. There's also campus-wide Bible studies and dorm Bible studies. You have your Barnabas, the spiritual leaders that are walking alongside students in the dorms. But we also have mentors from the community that come in. We also have 6 campus pastors, and so you can take something from every plate. And every section and really fill up your plate, or you can take the things that are really helping you grow spiritually alongside other students. And so, yeah, it is a really full experience. One thing I want to turn to a little bit is just the academics. What opportunities did your students take advantage of in their time at Calvin? And if any of you had students that were within the honors program or any other of the cohorts or academic programs, could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I can talk about that. My son, Jameson, who graduated and is now at the University of Michigan, he was in the honors program, and he stayed at Calvin during the summer and did research for a couple professors. He loved the academic rigor and the challenge. And I think that this is a place where professors will offer an opportunity to challenge yourself beyond what things are being taught. So there's many opportunities to go the extra mile and develop yourself.
I can speak to the professors and the academic part about that. Is what my kids really appreciated is the smaller class size and just getting to know the professors on more, on a different level than you would in a larger university type setting is what I know. My daughter really appreciated that and got to know some of the professors in her major, and they did challenge. Yeah, you could talk to them. They kind of challenged her a little bit, and that, yeah.
I know. I'm sorry. I know that one of the, for Taryn, she has shared that she appreciates the opportunity to connect with folks from the Center for Student Success. They've been really great. They have been willing to provide an academic coach if you need that for your student, or if it's a resource they feel that they need. She also gets emails now from professors and administrators in the nursing department about opportunities to work or be an intern. And definitely, like I said, the Career Center also, she is making those connections early on to discuss what her options are to work and planning out work study for the future. So that definitely has been a great resource.
Yeah, and one additional one that I personally liked was the Rhetoric Center. That's in the library, and that is a place where students can go bring their papers, and there'll be a student there that will read through their papers with them, help them make edits and any additional changes that will help them improve with their writing abilities and then the overall performance in their papers. Ken, there was one question in the chat that I wanted to get to really quickly. I think it's from Ed. His son is considering engineering, and what area is your daughter considering in engineering? And then maybe just to stack on top of that a little bit to be efficient, there's also a question about where do graduates find employment after graduation for engineering, or what opportunities, if you're into that at all or have any of that info yet.
I don't have too much info. My son, graduated a couple of years ago, now University of Michigan, is actually marrying an engineer. So I know a little bit about that. And my exposure to his best friend who took engineering at Calvin, both of them got jobs right out of Calvin. Excellent jobs as well. So that's really all I can say. I do know the engineering program is one of the flagships of Calvin. They're very proud of it. It's challenging, and they go out of their way to help kids find a place after college as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just brag about our engineering program because it is worthy of bragging about, but it is one of the top 50 undergrad programs in the U.S. And so there are lots of opportunities within Grand Rapids for them to get some engineering experience, whether it's Steelcase or Wolverine, which are two large companies. And then also if they're interested in biomedical engineering, I personally know students who have done some internships with medical organizations with technology. But also one of the big things for engineering, depending on what outshoot you're looking at, I know particularly like civil engineering, there's a lot of grad school work that goes into that. So getting professional experience to get into grad school programs is really important. And so one of my friends, actually, I visited him in Pittsburgh. He was at CMU and one of the best engineering programs in the US. And so, yeah, there are lots of opportunities in Grand Rapids and the full facilities that we have for engineering students to get that proper experience to go into grad school. But sorry, one question I was curious about is if any of your students studied abroad at all? Tammy, would you like to talk about that and what that experience was like?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Yeah, my daughter went on two study abroad programs, and my son was supposed to go this interim, but it's not going to work out that way. But my daughter went to China and she went to Nepal for interims, and they were the best experience. The professors she went with were amazing, and just to experience another culture. You know, she's the one that's in physical therapy, and one of them was a medical missions trip, so mostly nurses and pre-med. But it gave her a little different perspective on her career path as well. But just to experience that with her fellow students and the professors, and making her just think, it actually really deepened her faith and made her you know, just think more about what her career path meant, and what you know, like in Nepal, you know, they went to different, you know, missions that just exposed her to things. Like she was just really, it really impressed upon her the need for you know, the medical community abroad. And she still, even in grad school, she went to in her physical therapy school, did another study abroad because she just loved it. So they are very, very positive experience, very well organized.
So Avery, my daughter Ariana did spend a interim in the Netherlands and loved it. Learned some Dutch, learned about culture, grew in her faith and in her relationships with kids. Wants to go back. So it was just a wonderful opportunity for her too.
Yeah, and then Tracy, did Wesley?
Yes, Wesley did in January of this year, participated in the Mediterranean Crossings study abroad trip. So he was able to visit France, Spain, and Italy. And just like the other parents have shared, it was an amazing, just life-changing experience for him. It was wonderful from the standpoint of he was able to experience the culture firsthand, see a lot of the architecture, but the great part was how the studies, the actual studies and learning is incorporated and very integrally woven into that trip. He definitely loved it, wants to go back again as soon as he can. The timing of it was spot on because COVID hit right after that, and literally right after they got back is when everything shut down. So just thankful, you know, that they were able to have that opportunity before we, you know, had all these changes to travel.
Yeah, that's some good timing. I know the going abroad, studying abroad is either students' favorite experience at Calvin or their biggest regret in not going. So that's the divide, the two types of students that we have at Calvin. And a big part of that is because the financial aid travels with you. There are scholarships for that. It's professor led. So we don't just give you a ticket to Italy and say good luck, but we have a professor that goes along with you, knows the area and is familiar and can be a touch point along the way, and also make sure that the education part is in tow as well. I do want to turn to a question and tag in Sarah Visser for this. We have a question about coronavirus. The question says from Jennifer, how is Calvin handling the COVID situation? Our kids living on campus, online classes, hybrid classes. Since none of us know what the next fall holds, I'm interested to know what the current situation is, also how our students feel about the situation. So maybe we can have Sarah enlighten us a little bit about how we're handling the situation, and then maybe from parents, what your students' experiences are like under the season right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like we could do a whole nother town hall / webinar about COVID, because in fact, it has altered so much. But yes, we are really committed to doing in-person incarnational education. We think that that's so much of what Calvin does well. So we do have students living on campus this semester. We, like many other institutions across the country, will transition to fully online at the Thanksgiving break. And the reason for that is, rather than having people disperse and go home, which is really all over the country and world, and then come back, which we think is a riskier situation, they'll disperse at Thanksgiving and they won't be back until the new year. So we're handling the spring semester similarly to how we did in the fall. And that is everybody came back, everybody was part of a screening test process. And that allowed us to kind of do a baseline assessment, and then daily, all students, staff, and faculty are doing self-monitoring of symptoms. Anytime people are ill, we have a really robust medical team on campus. We have a full functioning primary care office that is integrated with our medical systems in the local area. So we're handling all of our testing on campus, both diagnostic and ongoing surveillance screenings that we do every week for randomly selected students. But we're also handling all of our own contact tracing. And that's been a real blessing for us because it means that not only are we aware when there's a positive case, but we also have the ability to do that tracing and work to put students in quarantine and isolation very quickly, which has really helped us avoid mass outbreaks. So we certainly have had cases on campus. And if you're tracking with Michigan, West Michigan in particular, you know right now there are a lot of spikes in the local area. So we've been adjusting to that. To answer the question about academics, there are some courses that are online, and we do have the ability, every single professor is teaching their course. Even if they're in person, there are people who are likely joining remotely. So it's kind of a hybrid situation. And that has also enabled us to support students who either need to be in isolation or quarantine or self-containing because of illness. But I do think it'd be valuable for some of the parents to weigh in because there's been a lot of things that we've had to adapt to, just like the rest of the culture. So you heard Tammy talk about, that January trip that is no longer happening. And, the life on campus in the residence halls certainly is altered. So they don't just have free reign to go everywhere and hang out everywhere. Much like classes, they're wearing their masks, they're 6 feet apart. So every place on campus has gone through kind of a hazard mitigation. But we've been really impressed with the ways that students are engaging. We have a remarkable student body, and we've been largely successful. And that's because of our students and also our employees and their commitment to safety. And we've talked about it as loving our neighbors well. So I'd love to hear from some parents on the student experience side.
I can say, as a public health nurse over here in Maryland, I've been really following what's going on at Calvin and leading up to the safe return. And I think they've gone above and beyond and have done an excellent job in making the policies to keep our students safe. And I just commend them for making it work. My son could not wait to get back to school. And so he was really thankful that they were able to. Most of his friends have been online learning or just in the dorms doing everything online and not able to do anything else. So we're just very thankful. And I think they've done a great job. He is a little disappointed that they're not able to do some of the activities, but he much prefers to be there and be a little limited than be at home. So, and he actually had to be quarantined and isolated. And I think and we live in Maryland, so I couldn't help him at all. Support him from afar, and he said everybody was fantastic. So just really appreciate it all and everything that they do.
I'm not sure I could have said it better myself. Similar to Tammy, I live all the way in Massachusetts. My two daughters, who I love very much, are at Calvin. But Calvin is committed to in-person class and safety. And they're doing just a magnificent job of that combination. I'm very confident and very excited that the investment my children and ourselves are making is an excellent one. And I've heard nothing but good things from my kids. So I really can't say anything more than that. I'm just very excited about it.
I am in awe of how well Calvin has handled having students on campus. As a parent, you're always a little nervous, especially now. But I can honestly say that it was a seamless transition onto campus. Move-in day was seamless. It was a great experience for my daughter. It was very well organized. The communication with students and parents to keep us updated, to help us be very clear on what the plan was and what the plans are, any changes, has just been seamless communication. So I give kudos to the staff at Calvin. And just as a parent, be reassured. I know that my children are safe on campus and that everything is being done to keep the entire Calvin community safe. So
I wanted to echo the communication thing too. I forgot to put that in there. I think Calvin does a great job, and not just with the COVID and safe return, but just in general, as a parent who lives far away, I think they do a fantastic job. There's a parent email that goes out every so often. There's a parent Facebook page, which I don't know if Susan Beist is on here, but does a fantastic job moderating. So if you have any questions, it's a great place to ask, and other parents actually answer. So I know I'm getting off that topic, but I just wanted to say that they do a really good job of keeping you informed of what's going on, so you don't have to continually be asking your child what's going on, which I think is a bonus.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing about the insights from your students and your experience as parents. I would say, personally, seeing the students coming together as a community and trying to protect the environment, the community that they have built, and seeing how much they care for each other and support each other through that, I think has been something that's personally been very encouraging for me, just to see as a staff member at Calvin. But yeah, that kind of brings our discussion, our Q&A to a close. Thank you so much for sharing your insights again. Thank you so much for Melissa and Sarah for sharing your insights as well. And I just want to invite you to take the next steps with us. On the screen here, you'll see our team of admissions counselors who are here and ready to be allies to you and your students as they make this journey through the rest of the year. We answer plenty of questions, both from students and parents, so feel free to reach out to us through that. But if you're interested in coming to Calvin, taking a visit if you haven't already, or if you're looking just to stop by again because it was so great the first time, you can go to our visit page and you can sign up for a visit. Also, there are a lot of other events that we are holding this year that you can also get involved with, or your student can get involved with. And particularly tomorrow, there's an event for juniors. If you have any juniors, that goes through career explorations and learning personality style and work style, and helping them really start the conversation about what does a career look like and how to use college to do that. And we also have an event for seniors as well next week for that as well. So yeah, we invite you to take the next steps with us and let us be allies for you throughout this process. And so yeah, again, thank you all for joining us tonight. And if you do have any questions, you can throw them in the chat now, then we can follow up with you later, or you can send an email to us and we'd be happy to follow up with you. Thanks again for showing up, and y'all have a good night.